to the 40K Fireside podcast, where we discuss everything to do with competitive Warhammer 40K with your hosts Vik VJ and David Gaylord.
Yo, welcome back everyone. As I messed the scene up, we're back. It's 2026. Man, we've been doing this podcast for ages now. We're old. In fact, we've been doing this podcast for so long, we both have daughters.
We became dads over the time we did the podcast. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, everyone. We're going to be doing the tier list today. You know, we wanted to wait and see a little bit here, and because things are changing, and I guess, you know, Ultramarines seems to get new stuff every day, so you got to constantly stay up on the latest Ultramarines releases. But, you know, we have a new announcement again, I guess, for 500 Worlds as well, which is the Ultramarines Necron Clash, which I think maybe, I guess, is that going to be the 11th edition theme, do you think? Ultramarines Necrons, perhaps? Or is
Gosh, I don't know which armies they're going to pick. They picked Necrons and Sisters of Battle and then didn't really do anything with that at the start of 10th. So it really could be anything. So
with the games, it has to be Ultramarine versus something else, maybe, at the very least. Maybe. But
I think these kinds of releases are obviously good releases for GW, especially towards the end of the edition. You can get a quick buck out of that, can't you? So I guess we've got a lot of detachments and rules coming out in that for, I think, pretty much every faction probably. So we'll have to wait and see what we get.
Nightbringer getting a new glow up. He looks pretty cool. The new model. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have.
It's very cool, I think. I think they've done a great job of that. So I'm a fan. So hopefully they make the Void Dragon a little bit better as well. But yeah, I wanted to kick it off actually with, since it's 2026, have you got any Warhammer New Year's resolutions? And if you've got one, by the way, if for the viewer, let us know what your Warhammer New Year's resolution is down below. But Vic, have you got any goals for Warhammer New Year's resolutions?
You know, I felt like I was on a good track last year, balancing Warhammer and life really well, but I'd like to maybe play a little bit more with our community. Try and get 1 or 2 games in a month, just on the Discord, and see if I can keep that up over this next year, especially with life getting a little bit busier, family life. And fortunately, I probably have no WTC this year, so I can just focus on maybe 1 or 2 singles events and also just playing online a little bit and keeping up to date with information. The game has become a lot more about analysis and tactics for me than constantly practicing and playing, which has been a change for me. But I love analyzing the game and seeing balance levels and sharing that with everyone here. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, for those that don't know, Vic is Vic's little one month old, right? Mine is 6 months old. So I feel like I'm on the kind of, I feel like I'm over the hump, you know, with my little one. So I feel like I've got a lot more time, and my New Year's resolution, I was thinking about this a lot, and I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, you know what? I haven't really been trying that hard over the past 6 months. Like, there was a period I went through where I really tried hard with Warhammer. Like, I would actually prepare, and I would like pre-measure everything in game and stuff like that. But for the last 6 months, I've pretty much just been vibing it, to be honest. So my New Year's resolution is I'm going to be actually trying hard for Warhammer. So I've got a tournament coming up this weekend. I could have played Black Templars, but I went, you know what? I'm going to play Ultramarines, and I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to try and play well. Because I feel like my little girl, she's kind of at the period now where I can leave the house a bit more and focus on playing. So I've got WTC coming up this year. So I'm going to get back to the grind, maybe play a few more big events. And if I do play them, I'm going to be making sure I come best equipped with a list that's going to win, not just some stuff that I really enjoy playing.
And practice, prepared, knowing what the meta is, all this. So, going all in. You know, Dave, one interesting point, that the video, How to Win Any Game of 40K, a lot of people have chatted with me about that. And one thing I've been thinking about, which matches what you're saying here, is kind of over time, when you're developing in Warhammer, you go through a phase where you're working really, really hard. And then as you get over that hump, you end up in a situation where the more important thing is knowing what you don't need to spend loads of time thinking about compared to what you need to think about all the time. So Warhammer gets a lot easier once you get to a level of mastery with it, where you can be like, actually, you know, I don't have to even think about that. That's not important. These are the 1 or 2 things that are important for this play. And those things are pretty universal regardless of whatever rule set you're playing in Warhammer. So hopefully that carries me through.
Focus on like what you're not good at as well is important, you know. which is important. So I've noticed like I've lost a few games here and there just because I've been a bit lazy, and so that's kind of an easy mistake to correct. Really, it's just for lack of trying, in all honesty. So yeah, coming back to it, but yeah, we just announced the 3 members of Team New Zealand Select today, so that was really awesome.
Nice.
John, Matt, and Michael, who are 3 awesome guys. John played last year as well, so I'm really excited to work together with them. They've been really impressed. I've actually been really impressed with the New Zealand skill level overall, and a lot of the above the table play, and how these people carry themselves has been very, very impressive actually. So I'm really happy with that. But yeah, it's going to be sad that you're not going to be on WTC this year, of course. But
it's
family takes precedence, really, doesn't it?
I'll try again next year.
Yeah. If they let you in, mate.
I'll just fight my way in.
Nice. So, why don't you walk us through like what the balance is going to look like today? We're going to talk about singles, all-terrain formats. What's the bizzo?
Yeah, I think we should do all-terrain formats in our discussion, because I think teams and singles have become pretty equal now. But if there is an army that is significantly better with certain detachments in teams, we're going to try and touch on those things. But I kind of sent Dave this idea. Instead of just doing the letters and leaving it very open to interpretation, we're going to do it based on what balance we think is needed if we were to ideally improve the meta for the next meta. So what balance changes might make the whole game better, and use that as our tier list. So we've got in our S tier that significant nerfs and reductions in the power level of the army are needed to make them go in line with what we think is a good balance level in the game. A is targeted nerfs, just little tweaks, 1 or 2 places. I think as a community, we are very keen to over nerf things that don't necessarily need over nerfing and putting them completely in the bin. So A tier is your armies that are really good, but maybe, if they were just a touch weaker, they would be in the perfect place, which is our B tier, our balanced tier. Our C tier is where we think little buffs, 1 or 2 units just to improve the viability of the playstyle the army is trying to play. And D tier is the full rewrite, because the army with its current rule set just doesn't really work or fit the narrative or the playstyle that the army is trying to do.
Yeah, and I think one way of thinking about whether or not an army, how much it should be nerfed, is maybe how much discussion you're giving it when you're considering what army you're taking, right? For example, if there's only one army you're always talking about in terms of like, how does it, okay, I can play this list, but how does it do against this thing again? That's obviously, I think, a sign where that army's taken up too much oxygen of the conversation, right? So we're trying to make sure that more armies are in contention for what you have to consider if you are going to go tackle into a meta. And I think that's a sign of a healthy meta, right? When you're talking about 5 or 6 armies instead of 1 army, right? In terms of what you're worried about playing against overall. And that's the ideal state we'd like to get to, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Which I think we were in the last balance update, by the way. I remember we had a lot of armies sitting in like our A tier, or our highest tier last time.
Yeah, I think there was still 2 that really stood out for me, but I certainly think we've gone downhill into this meta. And I think if you looked at our balanced data slate review, I think we were pretty spot on a lot of things really there. We didn't say that demons were super powerful, and we said that Vitrix Honor Guard were way too overtuned. And the meta that we're in right now, segue. Let's talk about the best army in the game. How about that, Vic?
Yeah, the one that seems deliberately pushed through to the top is Ultramarines, Dave, which I know you've been looking at making some content about as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm playing them this weekend as well, and I'm playing 15 Vitrix Honor Guard on WTC, and I think that this is by far the best army in the game. And I play what we're probably gonna put maybe as the second best army in the game. Maybe second, third, fourth kind of slot like there. I play that army as well, so I've got a pretty good power measure of what it feels like to play one of those versus what it feels like to play play Ultramarines. And I tell you what, Ultramarines is absolutely cracked. On WTC, it is so good, it's not even funny. For a couple of reasons. It has a brute force level of data sheets that is extremely strong, like Vitrix Honor Guard, Ballistus Dreadnoughts. The characters are extreme. Like Manius is very good. The supporting pieces are very good. The shooting elements are very good. Oath of Moment's very good. Okay, there's literally nothing bad in it. So the raw data sheets are extremely good. Mm-hmm. But actually, surprisingly enough, the movement and the skill expression of this army, I think is actually very, very, very high, because you've got several reactive moves, and in the list building step, you can also include things like transports, which really enable you to have massive skill expression, particularly with your reactive moves. So there's always obviously the approach where you can bludgeon people with Victrix Honor Guard, and you can do that, and Redemptive Dreadnoughts. But there's also a more nuanced way to play it, where I think you can really leverage playing a really dynamic style of it, like I'm playing with the Impulsor and the Repulse Executioner, giving you 2 transports, for example, and more tech pieces and more chaff pieces. So all in all, the army is extremely powerful. Nice. It has way too many rules. It has way too many rules. It's very frustrating to play against. It's way too durable. Does way too much damage. It's very, very difficult to see a downside of it, of course. I do think it gets a little bit worse on game. That archetype gets a little bit worse on Games Workshop terrain. It is still the best army in the game. And maybe if you're playing Games Workshop terrain, you're going to be playing a few less Victrix Guard and a few more shooting pieces. And that's, it's not like you're playing a worse army by much degree there. It's still very powerful, just because the deployment zone to deployment zone shooting is very prominent on that terrain format. And actually, I just did a video on the new Warden's datasheet, which just got printed, which is 20 wounds for 90 points. That's quite a bargain, that one. And it also gives you a redeploy as well, which is very strong on those Games Workshop style shooting. And you can actually play 3 Ballistas, 3 Redemptors, and Company Heroes, and the new Wardens. If you don't want to play Victrix Honor Guard, I think that's a really strong list as well, harkening back to the older Ultramarine styles with just Marneus and Gilliman, Company Heroes, and like 5 to 6 hulls there. So I think that's a very strong build as well. So as you can see, Vic, it's pretty hard to go wrong with Ultramarines.
How I feel like they balance this is, imagine Warhammer 40K was a PvE game. You're playing only against like all the Tyranid monsters and stuff, basically the Space Marine game, but on the tabletop. I feel like if that was the only way we played the game, this Ultramarines Codex, the rules, everything would be so cool, because Marines will do what Marines should do. But unfortunately, we're in a PvP environment where all the other armies don't quite have the same level of rules. They're not pushed. It's a weird one, because they've got the rules, but they've also got the extreme points efficiency here. And, you can't have both of them. And I think the points efficiency probably tips them over the edge, in my opinion. If they were pointed correctly, so the army becomes even more elite, you can have all these awesome rules, but your army's so tiny and elite that it's all right. We can balance around it. But at the moment, they're a bit too strong in too many ways, and they're really distorting the meta. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Dave, is the community's perception of this. It's very interesting, because I actually think this is a situation where we have an army which is significantly more powerful, which I think you agree, compared to the rest of the game. And normally the community outcry is quite extreme. And I think it's there. Everyone understands and accepts that this army is too strong. But it's not quite the same level of those Slanesh demons or Mordaka or even Star Shatter. It's not quite the level. Is there a bit of exhaustion in the community, or are we accepting it?
I think it's a bit of... I think the problem is that it's divided upon 2 axes, right? The community is outraged, and I think there's more outrage when you consider both points here. One point is the power level of the army, right? People are annoyed and outraged at that, but they are also outraged at the amount of model releases Ultramarine seems to get and the attention it seems to get. So I think if you focus both of those levels of rage into one point, it would probably be more, but I think it is, split between the 2 of them there as well, right? Because people are annoyed. I don't think anyone is happy, even Ultramarines players like myself, that, Ultramarines get all the models. Like, I'm not happy about it. I would rather see Tyranids get some models, right? Like, I would rather play Tyranids, right? I think it's a bad move all around, and I think Games Workshop is actually losing credibility, day by day on the Ultramarines topic. I think that's a losing war for them. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that one going forward, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember we're looking at it from like a very competitive point of view, but I do think the competitive side of the game is growing so much, which is why I was kind of impressed that GW are paying so much attention to it. We'll see how they change with the Ultramarine stuff, because that's a difficult one, between the casual side, all of their other releases, and the competitive side, and how they manage that. I think this is more tricky than any other broken codex that they've released before in terms of balance correction.
Well, you see, they on Wardens, they did make them epic heroes, which I was very happy to see. So they actually meant that you couldn't play multiple of them. And I think it was you actually that suggested the fix for Victrix Honor Guard, which is to make them epic heroes. And I think that's a brilliant solution. I think so many of the problems could have gone away if we make Victrix Honor Guard epic heroes. Because
it doesn't make sense that there's so many. Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to say the first one's manageable. The second and third one are really what kill you. So it's like, it's like the 3 waves there. So I think if you just do that, it becomes a focal point of the game, a unit that just, requires direct play around. But, oftentimes it's hard to manage all 3 of those at once. So make them epic hero. Games Workshop, if you're listening to this, for the love of Ultramar, do us some justice. I think just slap epic hero on it.
I actually think there's a lot more stuff which could be limited 0 to 1. A lot of these kill team boxes and things, you can kind of limit them down to 0 to 1 and give them slightly more power, so that they don't get abused, but they're still really cool centerpieces for your not just centerpiece models, but centerpiece units.
Yeah, I could see that on like Sanctifiers. I could see that on Kassakin, for example. I think that'd be cool. Make them a bit more, spicy, but make them 0 to 1. And now that you mention it, on a bit of a tangent, I think that's a really interesting design philosophy that hasn't been looked into for units, right? We've seen that in Epic Heroes, but Epic Heroes have typically been a tool that Games Workshop has used to delimitate characters from getting enhancements, right? Rather than the limiting tool of 1 per roster, so to speak, right? Or they've done that, but it's because of the lore, right? So I think, including that in some of the units would be really interesting as well. Or like you could take the super version, but then the unit becomes Epic Hero, right? Like I think that's a really good design space actually.
Interesting.
So, thumbs up if you like that suggestion in general. But, the reason we're talking significant nerfs here is that whenever you have a conversation around what army you're playing, what list you're bringing, the very first question is, how does it deal with Victrix Honor Guard? And the problem with armies being this dominant is, and we've seen this time and time again, like, Leviathan Warriors, for example, right? How does it do against Leviathan Warriors or Victrix Honor Guard? That dominates the conversation, and it doesn't leave any oxygen for any other armies to really be a part of the meta, really, does it? And that becomes a seesaw, like a warped meta, which we don't really think is ever going to be that healthy. So significant nerfs needed. I think the Victrix Honor Guard datasheet needs to lose one of its abilities, needs to become Epic Hero, maybe stay the same points after that. We need to have discussions around, losing +1 to wound, potentially an oath rewrite. And if we lose +1 to wound, I could see the vehicles getting maybe a little bit cheaper, but also losing an OC, for example. So there needs to be some balance like that to where you can't make the vehicles. If you nerf oath, you've got to buff the vehicles a little bit because they're actually not that good without oath, I don't think. But at the same time, make them so you can't spam them to get OC like you would do with Blister Dreadnoughts, I think, in that case. So that's where I would see the nerfs needing to happen, personally.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, nice. What do you think, Dave? Shall we? Which one do you want to do one, or shall I do one?
Why don't you do one? Because I'm going to get a glass of water. So what would you like to pick? Okay. Would you like to go through Aeldari? Or?
Yeah, go on. I can do a monologue on Aeldari.
Ooh, where are we going to put it, though?
So I think Aeldari should be in balanced here.
Okay.
Oh gosh, I'm going to get some backlash on this. So, all right, guys. So with Aeldari, I know a lot of people have been messaging me, please tell me about what you think about the updates for Aeldari. And I've been playing around with all the different detachments. My initial take was that Aeldari probably end up in a position where, you have to work really hard to win your games when you're playing against equal skill level. You haven't really got a significant advantage in resources. You can't go all in with your aggression. You need to play much more intelligently, which I think is overall a pretty good place for Aeldari to be. They've removed a lot of the feels bad mechanics, and now if you want to win with Aeldari, you need to win over 5 turns of the game. And there are a few different ways that you can take Aeldari now, and I think all of them are quite viable. I've seen people get success with Windrider Host, Seer Council, Aspect Host. You could even play War Host if you want a little bit of Fire and Fade action. But the actual list building, I think, needs to change. We've been talking about a lot in our Discord, and people are starting to become more and more streamlined and efficient with their lists, moving towards less Phoenix Lords, less Wave Serpents, more higher output for teams, more control for singles. And I think Eldari are in a very good place now where people can work out what they're doing with them. Are they really at the top of the power level in terms of trying to win a big singles tournament? Are they really going to have a matrix where they have big wins on multiple things? It's really tough to make that happen with Eldari at the moment. I would personally say they don't need any nerfs from here. I think all the units are quite fair. They're pointed a little high, but I think that's okay for the kind of cool rules that Eldar get. And I don't necessarily think they need targeted buffs. It would be great if we gained some rewrites of some of the vehicles. Unfortunately, Eldari fall into the thing where they have very low volume of shots on their vehicles, and the vehicles don't really come with lots of extra sponsons and guns attached, which can give them a bit of volume. So their vehicles will always feel a little bit rubbish. You can't make them too tough because they should be fragile and Eldari. And their dimensions are really poor. They're really big, bulky, hard to hide. So Eldar's a little stuck on the vehicles unless they change some of the rules with them. Built-in rerolls for vehicles, something like that might help out, but really that's probably something for 11th edition rather than 10th. At the moment, I think we should be happy that the kind of MSU aspect warriors, MSU, you can do your Wind Rider host, Shining Spears, I think are more viable now. Seer Council gives you the extreme control. I think there's a lot of viability in Eldar, so I wouldn't be discouraged if you're an Eldari player at the moment with the heavy nerfs that we received. I just don't think we sit at the top of the game at the moment. What do you think, Dave? You've probably seen a little bit of Eldari being played and things.
Yeah. We've had a couple of people on Team New Zealand been playing it, and Wind Rider as well. And I think that the way that Eldari should get buffed is by the meta changing, by that stuff getting nerfed, I think, right? Like these kind of durability armies like Ultramarines getting a bit of a nerf, I think will be what will hopefully open up Eldari and probably those MSU type builds to really flourish a bit more, right? Like good on scoring, primary control, maybe not attrition focused, but great at move blocking and playing all parts of the board. Going back to maybe how Eldari was played more when we had like behind enemy lines teleport homers style play, right? Where you aren't really focusing on nuking and actually tabling someone, but you can actually play a really high point scoring army. But these durability armies, because they're so stat checky at the moment, can obviously just start pushing you immediately, which is really hard to respond to if you're playing Eldar, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. But I think a good spot. I think if more armies come towards the level of Eldari, it's good. But I've seen, Dave, the split between the very techie, high-skilled armies and the very durable kind of you move forward, destroy your opponent kind of armies. Mm-hmm. And I like that Eldari sits heavily on the techie side now. If there was no terrain on the board and you just put your army versus another army, I think Eldari lose against pretty much the entire game, which I think is a good balance point. Because that means that all the rules can be so cool and you have to synergize everything to actually get the win in the game. Mm-hmm. And I think that feels great when you can make it happen as an Eldar player.
Nice. Why don't we look at Orks? Because I think Orks is really interesting, actually.
Okay.
I'm going to put Orks at the end of balance. But there's a really big caveat with this army, actually. Because it's a bit of hidden power level here. And like I think we've talked about already as well, if Victrix Honor Guard didn't exist, Orks would be significantly better. They are really a shining example of an army that really suffers because the top army in the game, they are very poor against, right? Orks are really poor against an army that has reactive moves, A transport, 2+ saves, AOC, fight on death, interrupt, you're shooting at the moment. Orks are quite poor against that defensive profile, right? Particularly if you've got fight on death, interrupt, and a 2+ save with AOC. Like that just doesn't really line up that well. So I think Orks really suffer from that, but I do think Orks are quite good into other parts of the meta. They are an interesting combat army in a sense that they do have like double battle wagon builds that can be quite good in combat. But there are other armies in there I think they maybe don't line up super well against, like maybe Imperial Guard or Admech, for example. So I think they are just in that balance spot. And if we see some of these targeted nerfs on some of the aforementioned armies, I think they would be, right in the fray there, I think. So that's kind of my take on Orks. They're really suffering due to the popularity of some armies at the moment, which I think is fair to say. I think that's kind of just leaves them in balance right now.
Yeah, let's say the best army in the game didn't exist. I think Orcs great spot, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think
solid
they've
army.
got plenty of play. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think they're a little bit terrain dependent, depending on what you're playing. But all in all, I think they've got lots of play over the rest of the meta.
If you compared Eldar versus Orcs here, they're next to each other in that, and I think that if the meta shifts and these two armies are the two best armies in the game, I think it's really interesting how they could tech against each other, and there would be a really good fight if these were the only two armies that existed. So I think that's a good sign of balance.
Yeah, I would be on the Orc side of it.
For sure.
I don't know.
But I think there's ways you can get it. If you put them on paper, I think the Orcs would probably look like they destroy stuff if they could just purely tech against Eldar. But I think Eldar have some tools as well.
Nice. What about next? What about Demons? I think Demons are really interesting.
Oh,
We've
spicy,
seen, Scintillating Legion. I think even in our team, Scintillating Legion broken, from our team of the Balanced Data Slate. But I think you were right on the hammer. And I think one thing that we've learned is definitely that you got to take results with a bit of a grain of salt, especially when they're really early on, right? Because some armies have this type of archetype playstyle that is quite tricky, and players often leverage bigger wins due to the information asymmetry, right? And once that army becomes a bit popular, in fact, its weaknesses might be really easy for a lot of armies to exploit, right? For example, a good combined arms list I think is quite good against Scintillating. A list that has good different damage profiles, so something that's maybe good against monsters, but also has options to kill chaff, right? Can put pressure on the total unit count that you can get with Scintillating Legion. I think Ultramarines destroys Scintillating Legion, for example. I think Guard and Admech have good games into it as well. And if you consider that, I think you really see Scintillating Legion more as an army that can be very good in some matchups. I mean, it's a very good army, but I think it's an army that can be really good in some matchups and crushing in some. So it's very good typically against combat armies, I think, because it has a good amount of attrition damage, but also has move blocking and big monsters and Be'lakor. So I think it's a good army. I was talking with a client recently about what army compositions they're going to take to a tournament, the Las Vegas team event, and I did say, hey, out of Scintillating Legion and Necrons, I think it would be better to play Scintillating because if you're a good Scintillating player, you often leverage the difference in player experience for your army more so than Necrons. And so I think that's definitely true with an army like Scintillating, which has got quite a few things going on under the hood that a lot of players don't really know if it's their first or second time playing against it.
Yeah, it's like GSC but with big birds, really. You don't know what's happening until you played it once. So I would say that the big gripe I have with Scintillating Legion is that it has good indirect fire in it.
Yes.
And I think as soon as that exists, it removes a lot of armies from being able to have a chance against it. And I've seen a lot of people say that, that game is just the worst game for them. Drukhari players, Eldar, Sisters, they really don't want to play against Scintillating Legion. And I think that alone means that it's a little too strong and needs targeted nerfs, if only to those parts of the list design.
Yeah. And I think I said when the Balanced Data Set came out in the team chat, I said the Puppeteer enhancement is the most broken enhancement in the game, and it's 10 points. There is no way that is fair. It is the best enhancement in the game. I will argue with anyone about that. You don't even get the indirect penalty. It is the dumbest thing ever. So I think that is the targeted nerf to put on that list. I think you could make that 40 points. You still play it. So just go to think about it, right? That's where I would begin with that for sure.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's a good spot. That makes sense. When people are talking about what the strongest armies in the game, they're talking about Tzeentch Demons in that discussion.
Why don't we pick a full rewrite, Vik? What have you got anything in mind there for a cheeky full rewrite?
Where have we got? Have we got Grey Knights somewhere?
Yeah, we've got Grey Knights. Is that kind of what you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about this last time. with Grey Knights. I think they've completely messed up the design of Grey Knights, and I just really want to see some kind of change on it. But I feel like we're only going to see it in 10th edition here, in 11th edition, because they've locked them into the 2+ armor saves. They've locked them into the teleporting around. These things are not lore accurate. The army doesn't hit hard enough in melee. It's a massive stat check with too few units in a meta that has too high output. That there is no room for balancing Grey Knights here unless you do a really full rewrite. And I think it's actually easy to do a full rewrite on GK if you want, because they have so few data sheets. So yeah,
I think maybe it is too, but we may have dropped Vik.
Oh no!
Here we go. He's back. Welcome back.
Hey, hello.
You were just saying how easy it is to do a full rewrite of this.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I think it's really easy to do a full rewrite on GK because there's not many data sheets in there. But just to make it a more dynamic army, kind of like what it was before, I would love to see more other units added into GK for you to take to kind of buff up the army. Custodes style with their Sisters of Silence. You get a few of the Imperial Agents put into the GK Codex. Make the GK units. They don't have to be super durable. They're only in power armor. Their power armor is not like a Terminator armor. They have Terminators for Terminator reasons. And see, oh man, I just want GK to be lore accurate. So yeah. And give them some spells, man.
It's a little bit sad when the majority of the edition, your army lists have been described as how many X NDKs your list has. So 5 NDKs, 6 NDKs, 3 NDKs. Like, great. Like, I think that it's a bit of a problem point, isn't it?
Yeah, and then they did these big bricks of 10 Terminators, and then you have the whole army of them, and it's just boring, boring, boring. Everything's boring.
I agree. Okay, I'll go on with something that's I think is balanced right now, actually. And I think it's actually quite strong. And I would put above Orks and Aeldari. I'm going to go with Chaos Knights.
Ooh, okay.
You know, I think we've been playing quite a few internal scrims here in Team New Zealand. And we played a team event here as well recently. And, you know, I was actually quite impressed by Chaos Knights. I think that they have got some good matchups. They've got some bad matchups. They can usually play to a small loss if you're talking teams. And, you know, overall, I think given how Chaos Knights started, like, 6-7 months ago, I think they're actually in a pretty good place right now where players don't feel oppressed playing against them. They've got clear weaknesses because they don't have so much stuff these days. And I think all in all, I think Chaos Knights are pretty balanced and they actually do have some degree of player skill driving them. And you've got to be a little bit better now than when you did previously when they were far too cheap, I think. So I think they've landed that in a good spot.
You know, the funny thing is that you need so much output to kill Victrix Honor Guard, almost like a vehicle stat check army, Victrix Honor Guard. So if you have enough damage to deal with that, you have enough damage to deal with Chaos Knights. That's how funny the Ultramarines balance is at the moment.
Yeah, the problem is that you can only shoot Victrix on the gun once because then they blood surge into you. So it's so hard to pin that unit down. You've got to get them like on an objective with a Rogel Dawn looking at them, where you're like rerolling basically everything into them with ignore cover, and then hopefully they don't CP reroll a random save because then they blood surge into you.
Oh man,
yeah, feels bad, man. But yeah, Chaos Knights, I think they're in a pretty fair spot here.
Nice.
Ye old Thousand Suns.
Oh, dude, I was just about to say Thousand Suns. Nice. I'm actually super hyped for T-Suns. Okay. I think they're in such a good spot here. Grand Coven list, get your 10 Terminators, get your buffed up Demon Prince. I think that army with Magnus has a good game into Ultramarines here. And I think that is a secret hit for teams, personally.
If there's a little bit of like top of balance, maybe.
Yeah, top of balance, because you can't really nerf them from here, because I think they're in the pristine spot. If you are a T-Suns player now, sure, it's a little boring, but it's not as boring as I think the initial codex was when it dropped. There's a little bit of risk involved with the magic. I like the feeling of that. You can get the 10 Terminators in. The output is high. It actually works against the Victrix Honor Guard.
Yep.
Madness.
I was going to say the Demon Prince also rerolls against character units, right?
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah. Dude. Yeah, if you can get the Demon Prince into combat, he helps against everything here in this meta. You have good output from your Rubric Marine squads, good output from your Terminators. You just don't have much stuff, so you're going to have to play it perfectly. But that's what T-Sun's masterminds are for, playing things perfectly. So I'm really happy with the balance level of T-Suns.
Oh, it's interesting, because they received a huge nerf,
Mm.
but I think they are also an army that maybe if if stuff gets shuffled around a little bit, they can maybe suffer a bit, can't they? Because they do like Ultramarines are a good example of an army that they kind of line up a little bit better on paper because their units are a little bit larger, a little bit slower, and they really are more vulnerable to getting multiple buffs like soaked into them, right? So like +1/+2 AP, like 4 rerolls to hit, like if you can stack multiple on them and really like form the Voltron, then you can really kill those units, right? So I think, yeah, you're spot on with that one.
It's an interesting one. I think the current rule set can never be oppressive because I don't think they're strong enough for that to be the case. But they're like a scalpel where they'll just work against some stuff, which is a really nice spot for T-Suns to be.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's kind of where that's a good place for an army to be, I think. Okay, Imperial Knights.
Oh, yeah.
That's a tough one. Imperial Knights is one of the lowest taken factions in the Alpine Cup recently as well, apart from the ones that literally weren't taken. I think one player is playing them, potentially. And I think there's somewhere between a full rewrite and just giving up on them, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's so tough. Like, I feel, have Imperial Knights been good this entire edition? Apart from when they were so busted, they needed to get pre-nerfed before it came out with the Thunder.
Oh, they got
right,
the Valorous something. Yeah. Those guys. Oh, man. That was actually really funny.
It's amazing how two armies can be so similar, but yet they somehow mess up the balance between IK and CK so dramatically, right?
It's a really tough one because my take is that they should be legends or agents, but it can't be the case because people love knights.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. I think. We lost Vik again.
Did I cut out there?
Yeah, you come back. What were you saying?
Yeah, I think the Knights players just hacked me.
They lost him.
Dave, I'm not sure there's a good way of fixing Imperial Knights here. It's just so hard to find the balance between good, too strong, ruining the game, and being too weak. I think they're better off in the level of just slightly too weak, which is probably where they are at the moment. If you're a really avid Imperial Knights player, you've got to find a way of playing the game. Oh my gosh, you cannot put them in targeted buffs needed. Not on this podcast.
Okay. Just 4 years. Why don't we go on to what was I going to say? I was going to pick something really cool here. Death Guard.
Oh yeah, Dave. I don't really know. Are they good? Are they in a good place?
Yeah, I think Death Guard are in a good place actually, and I think they're maybe the top of balanced right now. There's quite a few viable builds here, like Virulent Victorium, the Champions of Contagion. I think even the Hammer build is not terrible. And you can play like Mortarion, you can't play Mortarion, you can play like Blight Lords, you can, So I actually think there's quite a bit of build diversity there. You can play like the Demon Prince, you might not want to play him, the Spawn, or, how many you're playing there. So I actually think Death Guard are in a pretty good spot, and they certainly don't auto-win against a lot of stuff. So, I think if you're a Death Guard player and you're playing a singles meta or you're playing a team event, you've got a lot of interesting list decisions that you could make. Are you going to play Plague Marines? Are you not going to play Plague Marines? How many drones, Mortarion or not? And I think all of those are actually pretty interesting from a codex standpoint, right? Like, I think that's the definition of balance, where it's pros and cons for what you are going to take versus what you're not going to take. So I think Death Guard are in a really good spot here. And I think it's one of the codexes that's really landed well after the nerfs from Games Workshop when, not too long ago, Death Guard were fully broken. So, yeah.
Dave, I'm starting to see a trend here that we might need to change our initial conclusion on the game. I have a feeling that the game is feeling worse than what it actually is, because of Ultramarines.
Yeah, exactly right. It is a pretty big problem, though. So. It might only be one thing here. I can enlarge it, and I can actually just duplicate it quite a few times. So
that's how many Victrix Honor Guard there are.
Yeah. I'll duplicate it 15 times for what I'm playing this week.
I love that. That's clear.
Let's just balance that out a little bit. That makes it feel as oppressive as it should do.
Should we do the other chaos-specific factions like Emperor's Children?
Sure. What do you think about that?
Dude, I think Emperor's Children are in a good spot. I think they're imbalanced, and they sit right in line with T-Suns and Death Guard.
Fully agree. Maybe top of balance. I think they're better than Death Guard probably.
Yeah, I mean, they're good in teams. They've still got like moments where they don't quite have enough stuff. They've taken multiple nerfs now. Um, and I think they're just still a solid, okay army. I know people hate that because I think if you're not playing Emperor's Children correctly, it's really hard to actually get through to the end now with the amount of stuff that you have.
Hmm.
But I think if you just keep persevering and practicing with them, they are fundamentally a good melee army. They have all the right rules and output profiles as a melee pressure army. They ramp up really well with coterie to allow you to finish the game at the end. Are they going to win every single game, every single time? No, stuff is going to go wrong. You're going to hit a bad matchup. But they're just in a balanced spot for a melee pressure army. They're a peak melee pressure army.
Nice. Yep. Well said. I think they're in a really good spot. You really got to know where to pick your opportunities with the Emperor's Children, don't you? There's always going to be that trade off. So you got to persevere right to the end, and hopefully you have stuff at the end as well. Okay. What about AdMech? I think AdMech are really interesting.
Okay.
I actually still think AdMech are very strong. And I think they're definitely still in line with maybe a few cheeky nerfs coming up here. AdMech are really strong, man. I lost to AdMech recently with my guard as well. And, they still get a lot of stuff. I mean, I could have played that game a lot better. But, they still get a lot of stuff and their units still hit really hard. We've seen from the AdMech nerfs a lot of side grading, for example, right? All the things that got hit. Well, AdMech build diversity is actually, datasheet diversity is actually reasonably large. And, while chickens got hit, people have side graded into disintegrators. Rusty's got hit, infiltrators got hit, while they're playing like more rangers, a few more boats, for example. So I think AdMech are actually in a really good spot here. And I think they're still really strong. And I would put them, somewhere in targeted nerfs, wherever this is going to line up, somewhere in there, I think.
Yeah, okay.
I could see them being like the best army in the game if Ultramarines were kneecapped, for example.
Yeah, you know what? AdMech feels very similar to Guard to me.
Yep,
There's a
yep.
similar kind of power levels, level of skill needed to play them. The high volume output, high amount of stuff on the board kind of armies that just feel like they get a little bit more than a lot of the stuff just below it. What do you think about Guard, Dave? Where's your take with them?
Yeah, I think Guard are, like I said before, they're one of these best armies in the game up the top here, probably. Like me personally, I would probably, you can pick, here or there where you like these. I'm happy to put Guard as the second best army in the game. But I do think it's reasonably close between AdMech as well, depending on what terrain format you're playing. I think if you're playing on Games Workshop, Guard is significantly stronger because actually the Grizzled builds are, if you're playing a shootout, the Grizzled Company builds are like really efficient.
Nice.
Like,
Okay.
straight up, real ones to hit on Lehman Russes are like really good. If you're on objective, real ones to wound, that's really, really good. AOC, like you do not want to face this army in a shootout. I think even if you're Ultramarines, like you kind of don't want to face this army in a shootout, which goes to show like how efficient those data sheets can be. Like if you play, for example, just a regular Rogal Dawn, it has a 2+ save, Armor of Contempt, gets cover. It can also blanket damage, and then it's going to shoot you back on top of that as well. So, yeah, it's very hard to kill some of these units that can get very big, especially on these big shooting boards like Games Workshop, I would say nowadays. And I would say Games Workshop is the most shooting-orientated board now with the UKTC changes and, for example, like WTC is obviously less shooting-orientated than that. And Rogal Dawns struggle a lot more on WTC specifically. So Guard is a lot... I would say Guard is worse than AdMech on WTC. I would say it's a lot better than AdMech on GW, and it's probably pretty even on UKTC, for example.
I think Guard actually might struggle a little bit with firing lanes on UKTC still
Okay,
now.
yeah.
Now with the changes.
Yeah, I mean, Dawns are
Yeah.
very big as well. So
Yeah.
on WTC, these 5-inch gaps, a Dawn is wider than 5 inches. So a lot of these 5-inch gaps a Dawn can't go through, which usually means as one pathway, which means you can only play one Dawn, which is probably the best data sheet there. But like you said, UKTC, you do need to go straight over and see past them, or like around the corner to shoot onto their expansion objective, right?
Yeah, it's really because there's a lot of talk about terrain. I think people over exaggerate the difference between terrain formats for how it impacts meta. But I think now we've had the transition from UKTC, which was a little closer to GW. I think anything that could work on GW mostly worked on UKTC. Now there's a little bit of more closeness between UKTC and WTC, I think, compared to GW. So it'll be interesting to see how that discussion develops.
Yep. Like certainly playing, obviously, like I said before, Ultramarines and Guard myself. the power level is dramatic, for example. Guard actually, with Bulgrin, they don't really have the ability to hit your expansion with Bulgrin very easily, right? Like, you can move away from Bulgrin, they just move 6 and charge you, right? They can't buff their movement at all, which I think is a good balanced decision by Games Workshop in that one. So, yeah, I think Guard definitely up there, depending on what terrain format you're playing. The difference is minimal, that the better player will win, basically, is a very easy way of saying it. But I do think both the armies could get, maybe some nerfs on them. I think Guard could maybe look at Rogadorn Tank Commander could probably go up. The Cadian Command Squad maybe go up a little bit. The Ogryn Bodyguard maybe, something like that. But I don't think it's like anywhere, like I'm talking like 40 or 50 points maybe. But Guard have so many side grade options too, so you got to cover that, I think. The Vanquisher could probably go up, I think, a little bit.
Sure. Okay. I want to talk about Sisters, Dave.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think, this is going to be a controversial one in the Sisters community.
Bro, you better put some targeted nerfs. Man.
I think targeted nerfs, but like not in that first group. They're in their own group, kind of over there, because they need the tiniest little touch here. And actually, to be honest, they maybe don't even need it. But if we're looking at the relative power of the armies here, I think they are just a little bit better than the armies in the section below. Still, there's been a big change by getting Sanctifiers, the buff to Retributors, the buff to the Champions of Faith detachment that allows you to have an army that is just good into everything. But on the board, it doesn't feel like you have quite enough stuff to feel significantly stronger than anything else. It's just the archetype is good into any meta it comes up against. So targeted nerfs, I'm talking the lightest touch here and there, or do nothing and bring the stuff below it up. It's one of those kinds of things that I don't think they're as strong, and I don't think they feel oppressive on the board anymore.
Yep, I think Retributors are really efficient. I've been impressed with that. And, Bringers of Flame, I think, is a really good build archetype there as well. And then Hallowed Martyrs is a really good build archetype there as well, I think.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying Champions of Fate at the moment. I've been putting some list ideas over in the Discord and things. So if you guys want to check that out, make sure to check it out.
Give those Sacrosanct -1 to hit and wound. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's just handy. OC2 there, nice bit of extra movement. The Vals unit is still great. Retributors are great. Sanctifiers are great. They've got good, solid units. And targeted nerfs is harsh, I think, but I'm mostly putting them in there for A tier and for the Reddit engagement.
Yes. Nice. Okay, well, I think one place that's fair to put something is Deathwatch need a full rewrite. I think that's very fair. The one detachment they have has been... I mean, I don't even know... some people seem to win with this, but trust me, when you play good players that know how to play against Deathwatch, you absolutely destroy them. Yeah. There are extreme limitations. I think Games Workshop just doesn't know what to do with this faction identity, right? Like, I was playing Space Marine 2 recently as well, I love seeing my Deathwatch at the introduction there. Oh, it was epic, man. I was telling my friend, I was like, yeah, bro, this is like my favorite army in the game. Like, got all these guys in their shot. Like, dude. And then he becomes an Ultramarine like 30 minutes later. Great. So, yeah, I think hopefully they get some rewrite. I think maybe you could wrap up Deathwatch and Imperial Agents into one codex, maybe do something, because then that would make them have stronger troop options potentially. Oh, I don't know, man. But I mean, they released a kill team recently, well, maybe a month or two ago, and it was just the most pathetic release I've seen. It was basically a copy and paste of the existing data sheets in a different, they just reshuffled the deck chairs on the Titanic. It was why would you ever buy this? And the data sheets were, lacking and exactly the same as existing ones. So, it was,
I think Deathwatch need the Victrix. They shouldn't have been a fleshed out detachment. They need the Victrix Honor Guard treatment, where it's a 0-for-1 amazing kill team that you can take in your army. Or it should be completely narrative. They should have their own game. Where you just play Deathwatch versus other stuff PvE style. Unfortunately, as a full faction, it's just, man, they don't have enough stuff there.
Could you imagine if each kill team was an epic hero and you could take one of each of them? You had your Spectres kill team, your Indom kill team, and you had your army was 5 different kill teams. Oh, that'd be so sick.
Yeah, dude.
I'd actually be so for that.
A squad of 5, where it's just 5 characters that you customize. Yeah. Oh, cool.
Oh, the painting would be so awesome for that as well.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, don't get me started. Okay.
Got Dark Eldar, maybe? Drukhari?
Yeah, Duck Elder, yeah.
Dude,
Where am I? Yep.
I've been playing around with Drukhari as well, bit of Spectacle of Spite and seeing where we are. I think they are with sisters.
Oh, yeah.
I
Interesting
still
take.
think Spectacle of Sight needs a touch here.
Yeah, it is pretty strong. Yeah.
They are held in place because I think the Tzeentch Demon game is so bad.
Yeah. Vitrix on a Guard is really bad as well for them.
Yeah, Victrix Onagard, people thought that would be a good game for Drukhari because they should line up well with Spectacle of Spite, but it's not. It's not okay. But actually, they're really strong, and I think they're similar to like Sisters, where you just need to touch 1 or 2 points here somewhere just to keep them on track. But really, those are your proper A tier armies. You know, this is the kind of level you want. If the game ended up that Sisters and Dark Eldar were the best armies in the game, at that power level, that is a good meta.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It's and like Spectacle of Spite has play against it, you know? It's not as if like it's an unstoppable force. There's definitely ways you can play against it, which I think is a good sign. Okay, why don't we get to Raven Guard potentially? Man, I mean,
Dude, do you want to buff that nonsense?
Dude, don't buff it, please. But
don't buff it.
It's somewhere here or something, man. Like,
yeah,
it's got play. I think if you're a Raven Guard player, you're just going to be paying for the sins of a little bit of broken time here, and I don't know what happens with the moment with them as well. Who knows? I think Raven Guard's just genuinely in purgatory for like the end of the edition. I don't think Games Workshop want to touch them with anything. I doubt they would get anything done. I think just enjoy playing the detachment for that month that we had it, but you know, you're probably not really touching this unless it's a very niche format, I think.
Dude, I'm struggling here with anything that needs little targeted buffs.
Okay,
I don't know if you can think of one.
Okay, I can think of one. I think Votann could do... Well, Votann's decent. I think Votann is an interesting one because it has some builds which are actually pretty decent, but it's definitely stronger than Raven Guard. That's for sure.
Yeah, everything's going imbalanced here.
Yeah, we can shuffle some stuff around. So I think Votann does have some interesting answers to Vitrix Honor Guard. You know, it's got the Terminator brick. We've seen at the New Zealand team event a couple of Votann players doing really well. Earthshaker's still pretty good. Like Need Guard, which is the index like version V2 has kind of become the most popular one. I know Tim was playing a lot of Delve as well. So I think they're smack bang and perfectly balanced, I think, in here. And you want to see targeted buffs, Vic? Well, I'll give you some targeted buffs, mate.
Okay.
Tyranids. Targeted buffs. Either that or full rewrite at this point.
I swear they get buffed every balance update, though.
Bro, they get buffed in the most useless ways possible. Like, I don't know what the hive mind over at Nottingham is thinking, but jeepers. Like, for a faction that is so cool, they've, like, stalemated the hardest of the entire edition, I think. Like, they were one of the first codexes to come out, and boy, did they really get to play their codex for a long time. Even their subterranean one, they took away the only fun tool that they had, which is being able to teleport out of combat, which is not even that great. I mean, it's good for them, but I mean,
people went crazy over that, did they?
Yeah. I mean, how cheap can a Horospec get before it's actually playable? Like, you go to... Here's the weirdest part about Tyranids. You go to their data sheets and you read them, and you're like, man, 14 wounds, toughness 11 at 3-up save at 125 points, and it's got 16 attacks, and it's still bad. Like, jeepers. The Screamer Killer, not good. Yeah, so make Genesteal is great again. I don't know, Tyranid Warriors have been terrible the entire edition as well. There's so many things that have been terrible the entire edition in Tyranids that I would like to see some stuff get targeted buffed, for sure. Make some stuff cool. Like, give them a new detachment that's actually good and can be played. Or, like, no, don't actually, sorry, I didn't say that. Don't give them new detachments. Just buff the points on some of the units. Not the Exocrine, okay? Don't buff the unit that is just a boring shooting unit. No. Buff the interesting combat units, please, okay? Some of the other units, maybe like Venom Throbes or Von Ryan's Leapers or something like that. Just buff those things. Not the Biovore, right? Not the thing that everyone includes, okay? Not the Tyrannofex. The other stuff that people don't play, okay? There
Love
we
it.
go. All right, that would be lovely.
Solved. Solved.
Great, thanks, mate.
How about Tau, Dave? Have you managed to play against Tau in any of your testing or seen it now with the stealth suit nerf?
Oof. I think Tau we could put back in the targeted buffs needed. I think as well here.
Gosh, how do you balance Tau? Okay, I'm going to put this out there. Is Tau a player-based problem? Is there a
think
lack?
that's true.
Is there a lack of people pushing what will actually work in Tau in their community?
I don't know, because you do look at Tau and you do think there are some obviously strong parts to this, right? Like as a guard player, there's a lot of parallels that you can draw that are obviously quite good. So you think, well, given that, you could definitely see it being quite decent, but it's not great on WTC either. Like, I've only been playing WTC for like the past 2 months here. So on GW, I think it's definitely got play. But did the Pathfinder nerfs, were they really needed? I don't really know. I think on UKTC they were strong, but that was just a terrain format issue, and I think that percolated up to the higher heads, and that's what brought some of the nerfs in. I think maybe making Kroot a little bit more interesting could be good, or maybe making the transport plus infantry unit combos a little bit interesting, more viable. That'd be interesting, right? Like making Devilfish plus infantry a bit more of a payoff to play, right? I think that would be maybe a good design space to go into potentially. Yeah.
You see, Guard, Admech, Votann, and Tau have a lot of similarities in the type of archetype that they're trying to build. And Tau has historically been the one that's leaned heavily into shooting output. And I think the mistake they've made with Tau here is that they haven't made the shooting output extreme. In this, which is weird, it's a weird thing to say because that's the thing that people hate about Tau. Instead, they've tried to give them a balanced, full kind of army approach, minus really not having melee, unlike the other three. And I don't know where they go with Tau from here, because you need big buffs on like a couple of shooting units, but it's just going to feel bad.
Yeah, I mean I still think that the guiding mechanic is still poor. It's a poor play experience personally. So I think from the opposition standpoint, it's very difficult to track what's going on, track what it does. Maybe that's just people needing to get markers for a change. People have guard markers for the orders. Maybe just get them some marker lights, even if it's a little, I don't know, something. So I think Tower needed some targeted buffs, particularly in areas that haven't been seen played for a long time.
I think their profiles have too low strength, personally.
Yeah.
I think it's always felt like in the past that when you play against Tau, that like, oh my gosh, the ion guns and stuff, rail rifles are like strength 15 or something like that. Yeah. And now because toughness has gone way up, strength on weapons has gone way up, Tau has lagged behind, and now you have the Riptide as strength 9 when it should really be strength 14 on its big gun or something. For you to really feel it when it hits.
Back in 9th edition, when Plasma was king, Tau were just, plasmaing everything. It's like wounding on 2s and 3s on vehicles, So, yeah, I agree. I think those days were better for them, for sure. Okay, I'm going to go on with another targeted buff needed. I think Space Wolves are definitely in there.
Oh, okay.
I think Space Wolves they don't need a buff as much as other things. But I guess, how is this going to work? Is if it's higher up, it needs less of a buff, right? But I guess they're all kind of flat, aren't they, to some degree? So I think Space Wolves have really suffered from when they initially got nerfed after their release. They got the Iron Priest nerfed. And then after that, the list that I was playing got 80 points on it, I think. And it wasn't even that good. Like, this is a classic Black Templars nerf where it was, I lost games with it at tournaments. I certainly wasn't rolling anyone. And like Ragnar went up and I was already thinking about cutting him, sort of situation. So I think there really was a disconnect between actually what was good in Space Wolves at that point in time and really what they needed. And I don't think they needed nerfs at all. So if you look at Titus, for example, that just got printed, and if you think he's roughly 90 points, like all Space Marines characters seem to be, he's a lot better than Ragnar, for example. And Ragnar is like, not the hero, but the second hero of Space Wolves, and in an army which is basically supposed to just be combat, and he actually doesn't hit that hard because he doesn't reroll at all. So I think they've missed the boat on that one a little bit.
They've let them slip into obscurity, haven't they?
Yeah, which is a shame because I think Space Wolves have some of they have some of the coolest heroes. And it really does feel cool when you play them as well. On top of that.
How about Blood Angels, Dave?
Yeah, I think Blood Angels are definitely at the top here, man. I was wrong on my assessment on this because I didn't really have much information on it, but people really have jumped to the new detachment, and I think you could argue Blood Angels is somewhere at the top here, and Demons are probably in the mid here. I think we could see a few targeted nerfs on them, maybe on some of the pieces that are spammed. I'll confess I haven't done much info into the actual list builds here, despite being the aforementioned Marine player on the podcast now. But I do hear reckonings that Blood Angels are really strong, and I can imagine actually at the Alpine event, I think France and Germany are taking Blood Angels in a meta where Victrix Honor Guard are so dominant. So I think that's just goes to show the fact that they're even in contention with Victrix Honor Guard, I think, means it's probably something that needs to get changed.
Blood Angels are a really fascinating one to me because I think they weirdly have a challenge against the stuff below them compared to the stuff above them, which is kind of weird. It's rare that happens. So I would say that Blood Angels, we always get Blood Angels wrong. We pretty universally have always messed that up, Dave. So I think Blood Angels should be below Demons and should be on its own little section, probably in between the Admech Guard thing, because I think they're brilliant in teams, and I think they may not do so well in singles.
Yeah, I mean, they are obviously a combat-oriented army through and through, right? So there's always going to be counterplay there to some degree, whether it be board or whether it be like list building phase, I think. GSC, I mean, targeted buffs needed, full rewrite. You know,
are they not in a pretty balanced place at the moment?
Yeah, I've genuinely not heard anyone having luck with them.
I think they're a low volume of players kind of army. I think they're perfectly fine. I think if someone if you get Innis jumping back on GSC, I think they'll be perfectly fine here and probably lead the community to victory. I don't think there's any reason they are significantly weaker than they were before.
Cool. Are we perhaps happy like that, maybe? Yeah. Below Votann. Cool. Nice. I like that. Imperial Agents, I mean, look, I'm not going to lie to you guys. We literally just added it to the tier list to put it in full rewrite because we always get someone comment on the videos, why haven't you not touched on Imperial Agents? We don't know what the fuck is going on with this codex. Don't ask us. We're not Imperial Agents players.
I know the Calidus Assassins in there.
That's the most I played of Imperial Agents. But, it's in the rewrite purgatory, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, I think Imperial Agents is one where they could do with them. They tried too hard to flesh it out like Deathwatch. Instead, they should have focused on really, really cool rules for their individual characters to push them into lists. You want to run Kotiaz's new model, you want to run Inquisitor Greyfax and the Calidus Assassin and an Eversur Assassin in your list, and you can only take one or two of them in an entire list would be great.
Nice. Okay, why don't we go on to World Eaters? Because I think World Eaters are in an interesting position, because I do think they're better than basically any army in Balanced, but I think that they need very minor nerfs here. And I think... No. Well, here's the problem. They line up against Victrix Honor Guard awfully, by the way, right? Like, that is a terrible matchup. Admech and Guard are pretty tough matchups, right? So I think Blood Angels might be a bit of a tough matchup. Sisters, maybe that's a good one.
I think that they're in the top of Balanced with the other three Chaos things. Okay. I think so. I think you can get away with just not even touching them, and I don't think they'll be oppressive because people will just start to tech against it.
I do think that is the lowest they will go though, the top. So I do think they are quite good, and I do think the builds that are quite good are particularly like Berserker Warband, which I think is what everyone's playing at Alpine this weekend.
So I want to say something for the whole game. We had a moment where we had 3-inch deep strikes nerfed into 6-inch deep strikes. I think the game would have overall been better if every 6-inch reactive move was a D6 in the game. And, you could leave Eldar with their D6 plus 1. At best, if something's really fast and speedy, give it D6 plus 1. Don't give things flat 6-inch reactives and blood surges and things like that.
Are you segueing onto Templars here, are you?
Go on, Dave. Do it.
No, because they have a 6-inch reactive move.
I mean, it feels like loads of people have it, but it's just not a good mechanic. I think that's kind of proliferated in 10th edition.
I think Black Templars are balanced, but they're certainly pretty mid, mate. They're below mid, to be honest with you.
We love mid.
I mean, Votann is probably a better army than Black Templars, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one, guys. I genuinely love playing this army, and I played it a lot, and I put a lot of painting into it as well. But with my New Year's resolution, I am very unlikely to be picking them back up. In fact, the best buff to Black Templars I've gotten is that Victrix Honor Guard model is so similar to the Sword Brethren model, no one even knows the difference. I'm not even joking.
Oh my gosh.
That's genuinely true. All my Sword Brethren just became Victrix Honor Guard. So,
no, that's sad.
That's why you paint your Marines all as one scheme, so you can just mix and match. Goodness, I think that's it's an interesting one. Okay, Dark Angels. Ooh, I think Dark Angels is actually quite good right now, man.
Dark Angels is my least favorite Space Marine chapter. And I'm very loving in general of all the Space Marine chapters. I think they're all really cool. Dark Angels is my least favorite because anytime they're good, it's just 30 Deathwing Terminators or something stupid. And what do you think, Dave?
Hard to agree with you on that one, to be honest with you. But I think Dark Angels are pretty good, man. You know, we've seen Joel Larson do quite well in the Vasler League with them. We saw a couple of people in the New Zealand events do well with them as well. And they do line up well against Victrix Honor Guard. Like, they do have answers in there. They've got the Lion, which is a great combat control piece in particular. So I think you could see, 20 to 30 points on, their overall list. Some very small nerfs. I do think they are a pretty good army overall, man. Particularly on the heavier terrain formats. They're not played a lot, to be honest with you. I don't see a lot of players, or especially like really top players, really enjoy playing them. So I do think that hinders them a little bit in representation.
I think with targeted nerf, if we're going to put them there, because that's going to be a controversial take, Dave. I'm going to pre-warn you about that one. Every single they've got to be all the way down there. So that people can't even see that they're there. Otherwise, no one's going to discuss anything else. But why is Dark Angels up there? Useless.
It's difficult to get the scale right here sometimes.
CSM?
CSM, yeah.
Dude, CSM have been balanced all edition. What a codex. Goodness me.
Yeah, to be fair, that's very true. And really, I think CSM has been the story of the pilot, hasn't it? Particularly because Liam has won so much with the build that almost no one has played. So I think really it's a piloting thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
honestly think they're lower down than these. I think the normal human being is not going to do as well with CSM as they are with any of those, really.
Yeah. I do think they're better than Orks, though, man. I mean, come on.
Okay. In that group.
Orks are terrible. Orks have some very powerful parts. Custodes?
Custodes got a nice buff to the Custodian Guard. Custodians are not bad, man. Honestly, I don't think they need any buffs from here. I think it's as much as Custodes can be an army with the limited amount of data sheets they have, as much as they can be without being oppressive and every single person playing them, I think they're in one of their better spots, personally. Right down and balanced, like not high up, because they're still, in my opinion, they're still too fragile. I know people hate that because they've got a 4-up feel no pain on the Wardens, but I just think they are actually a little fragile.
Somewhere there. I think genuinely I could do better with Custodes and Black Templars at an event.
That's not going to be true, Dave.
Yeah, no, genuinely.
Oh man, that's a big take.
Bold take, man. I genuinely think that, I think a lot of Custodes players they don't actually play the macro strategy correctly, but it's really important to nail that when you've got such a narrow, undynamic army, right? Like that's the most important thing is your unit placement, and that's oftentimes something that players get wrong the most. Like I actually watched Manny Chima play Custodes, and I was really impressed how someone could get so much out of an army that moved so slowly, and he did really, really well with them. This is a couple of years back or something. And it made me realize, actually, there's always more to an army like Custodes, because a lot of the times the games you watch are resulting in skewed games because units have actually been misplaced, so to speak.
Yep. Okay, fair enough.
The Chronos.
I just want to touch on that point that I think the lack of dynamism that Custodes have will hold them back. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
how good the pilot is. Sure, you'll get the macro strategy right, but there's a certain cap to where that can take you. And I think armies like Black Templars are a little more dynamic. They're a little faster. You have a few more units that you can use. You have a little bit more volume shooting, you have a bit more stuff. So I think, okay, it's in roughly the right place, but I don't think you would enjoy that army, Dave.
You probably have the same amount of units, to be honest with you. Like total amount of actual units, probably somewhat similar, I think. Necrons, I was going to say the most balanced codex, one of the most balanced codexes of all edition. I feel like they've landed, but then had Canoptic Court.
It's had ups and downs, man.
Yeah, it definitely has, hasn't it? I definitely think it's in a pretty good spot right now.
What's that detached, that Awakened Dynasty? Oh my gosh.
Awakened Dynasty? 40 Warriors?
That was not fun.
Yeah. That was the index attachment for a long time. So that was when the Warriors were really popular. I actually think Necrons are fantastic in teams. I was really surprised that more teams didn't play them in Alpine, and I think the 40 Necron Warrior build, in fact, is actually brilliant in teams. I think it's really good. I'm not
please don't pair me into that.
Play that in Awakened Dynasty or play Star Shadow with 20 Warriors. I think there's some in a team environment, there's some armies that just cannot deal with that.
Nope.
Like it crushes Knights, for example. Good into EC, good into Death Guard. Good into like Sisters, for example, right? They literally can't deal with that. So yeah, I think that's being a bit slept on for the teams meta in particular. And I think you can make a decent run with Necrons. And look, Nightbringer's coming out, and Nightbringer looks pretty good now. He's got Deep Strike, moves 10 inches. Those are just the buffs you would want to see. He's going to be on a bigger base, I think. But it'll be interesting to see what the power... I'm interested, Vic. I don't know the points for the Nightbringer. The Nightbringer is getting a pretty significant buff. Do you think Games Workshop are going to push the Nightbringer as hard as they push Ultramarines? Or
90 points.
90 points. The Nightbringer.
Paint in blue, he's 90 points.
2 for 240. 1 for 110. It'll be interesting to see where they go with the Nightbringer. Because I think the points from the latest releases have been pretty off, so to speak. So yeah, anything you want to change in that, man?
Let's have a look. I think we can put Demons above Admech. I think.
Oh, really? No,
yeah.
No, I can't do that.
No? Okay.
No. Admech is way better than Demons, man.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Demons.
Denied that one. Otherwise, I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think the mid is in a pretty good spot right now, but it is difficult to understate. It's easy to understate how much of an impact the Ultramarines have, right? Despite them being one codex, they do represent a huge part of the meta. And if you are going to make a deep tournament run, I mean, it's very likely that you're going to play against Victrix Sonarguard probably twice, right? You're playing a 6-round event, you're probably playing them games, one game in game 1 to 3, and then probably a game in either 6 or 5, right? So, that will dominate a large part, 30% of your games in a deep tournament run, most likely, I think.
Yeah, it's easy to play. It's such a high volume of players using it. Top players, every single part of the community is using it. Overall, Dave, to be honest though, I'm looking at this and, okay, we've got that Admech, Guard in there, but really the meta looks pretty good except for Ultramarines. It's a real shame that they messed that one up.
Yeah, it's having a pretty big impact right now. And if Ultramarines just got nerfed, I think we'd be in a pretty interesting position here as well. Like with Guard, Admech, Demons and Blood Angels being at the top. And then potentially, Sisters and Dark Elder there. Like you've got a good, skew of like combined arms and combat on top of that. Assuming Ultramarines would probably still be there at some point, right? Maybe if Ultramarines came down to the top of A, I think would be, looking a bit more interesting for sure.
Which I think they easily could do. Because you can keep the rules and just increase the points significantly. And they can be a really cool army. One thing that they've missed for so long is just nerfing Gladius in any way. I don't know how that's gone through the whole edition and just crippled the balance. Oh,
bro, don't nerf Black Templars again. I mean, come on. What are you trying to do here? That's the only good detachment for them.
Everything is just balanced around Gladius, which is a real shame because it removes all the kind of differences that different Marine chapters can have, really.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
I mean, the obvious answer being that they should just print useful detachments in the other codexes, but you know they won't seem to do that either. But yeah, there we go. I'm thinking my New Year's resolution is going to be coming in hot this weekend, buddy. I'm playing 15 Victrix Honor Guard. I'm going to be bringing the thunder, you know, pitting people to 1-2. Got Kato, got the Impulsor, got to charge people on turn 1. That's how I roll, bro.
Is that a 5-round tournament, Dave?
It's 5-round GT. Yep. Got 32 players, I think 34 players, something like that. So,
lovely.
Yeah, I'm pumped for it.
Good luck.
That'll be good.
Good luck. Have fun.
Okay, guys, that's been today's episode. Take a screenshot. Hopefully actually listen to the podcast. And if you're going to rant on Reddit about it, at least, you know, say that I'm good looking. Okay, guys.
Cheers, everyone. Take care. Make sure to subscribe, like, join the Discord, join membership, and we will see you all next time by the Fireside. Thank you for listening to the 40K Fireside. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, drop us a comment, check out the YouTube members area, and we look forward to seeing you again next time by the Fireside.